policy level. So with that, it is my happiness now to segue over and introduce the next set of presentations. Let's see here. So Steve Widdicombe, co-chair of Global Ocean Acidification-Observing Network and director of science at Plymouth Marine Labs, is going to tell us a little bit more about the OA research program taking shape under the UN Decade of Ocean Science. And as most of us know, the UN Decade of Ocean Science was launched just last year as a way to prioritize thinking about science for decision-making, science for management, and how do we think about OA science for management in this context. So Steve, I'll bring it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessie.
Mm-hmm. Lots to think
share
about.
My slides. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Tell us how OARS can save the day and how OARS can help us fill all these knowledge and data gaps that we need to respond to these calls.
Oh, no problem. What will we do with the second half of the decade? Anyway, no. So OARS. I'm not seeing it as a full screen yet, is it? Or is it just my slow connection?
It's my slow connection. Let's give me a second here. Apologies. And if you just want to start launching in, Steve, I'll get them up in just a second. I'm having a little bit of trouble.
I have to remember what my first slide is now, Jessie. That's the problem. I'm going to thank. Well, anyway, before I go into OARS, I'd like to actually take everyone back a little while, because ocean acidification as an environmental challenge has been quite widely recognized by the scientific community for a couple of decades now. And there was a huge amount of research being done, and it was clear that there was a global effort around understanding the impacts of ocean acidification and observing it. And around 10 years ago, that global community came together to create the Global Ocean Acidification-Observing Network. Just waiting, is a slide's going to come up?
I'm sitting in a frozen screen myself.
Do you want me to try and share mine?
Give it a go. We'll see what happens. Give it a go.
No, I'm disabled from sharing.
All right. The wheel is starting to turn again, but we'll just give it a couple minutes.
Can't you give Steve a sharing right? Then he could share that himself.
Well, I'm in a bad situation in that my screen is fully frozen, and so I don't even see the Zoom controls right now. But
Lorelei maybe can do it because she's co-host.
Yeah,
right?
I'm doing it at the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, here, Steve, you should be able to do so. To share your screen.
Okay, let's see if I can do it now. Where am I? Okay, can we see that?
Yes,
perfect.
sir.
Can anyone see that?
Yes, that looks good. I can see it.
Okay,
Perfect.
brilliant. Okay. So here we are. So I was talking to you about GOAN, the Global Ocean Acidification-Observing Network. So about 10 years ago, the global ocean acidification scientific community came together to create this network, because there was an understanding that OA is a global problem with a lot of shared interests and shared knowledge that needed to be fast-tracked in order for us to understand how ocean acidification was going to affect marine ecosystems and environments right across the planet. 10 years later, GOAN now consists of pushing close to 1,000 members across 105 countries. And I think what I would like to say is that we've heard a lot today about about regional coordination and activities. And GOAN organizes itself into 9 active regional hubs: North America, South America, Africa, Mediterranean, Northeast Atlantic, Arctic, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Pacific Islands, and also an emerging hub in the South Atlantic as well. So what I would urge, if you are looking to undertake activities at a regional level, please do reach out to GOAN and do reach out to the regional hubs, because they can provide a sound scientific basis and access to those scientific experts that will allow some of these actions to really bed home and be based on sound scientific research. Because we know that whilst ocean acidification is a global phenomenon, the impacts really occur within a local context, and just extrapolating from one place to another is not easy. But but GOAN was very much focused on particular academic interests. As academics, we were very good at understanding what it was we wanted to do, what the really interesting science was. And what the UN Ocean Decade challenged us to do was think very differently about how we wanted the world to change. How did we want the world to look in 10 years? And what were the outcomes that we needed to support to allow that to happen? So GOAN used its position as a global leader in the ocean acidification science community to bring together our thoughts and ideas about where ocean acidification science needed to be in the next 10 years' time. And what came out of OARS, or what came out of that was OARS, the Ocean Acidification Research for Sustainability Program. And in that, we identified 7 outcomes where we wanted ocean acidification to research to be in the next 10 years. We wanted to have a global science community that was equipped to provide the high quality, high quantity, and high resolution ocean acidification data that was going to be needed to answer those questions and address mitigation and adaptation policy. We wanted to understand what the specific data and evidence needs were for mitigation and adaptation policy, both from local to global scales. We needed that to be clearly identified and provided. We needed to ensure that there were long-term ocean observing systems, and that those systems were co-designed and implemented, not just by scientists, but also by those people who were responsible for funding those observations, and also those people that were going to be using the knowledge that was data that was generated from those observing systems. We wanted to ensure that the risks and severity of ocean acidification impacts on marine organisms and ecosystems were much better understood. And that goes across a whole host of different UN programs as well, and initiatives. So requires us to reach out as a key partner and bring ocean acidification to those biodiversity level discussions. We wanted to ensure that there were societally relevant predictions of ocean acidification. So not some huge global back of the envelope calculation of what the mean ocean acidification rates were likely to be at an ocean basin scale, but what was ocean acidification going to be like at the point at which it acted on marine ecosystems and human communities and societies. We wanted the public to be much more ocean acidification literate in terms of its causes and its impacts, because only by engaging to the public do you get the legitimacy to implement actions that will help ocean acidification, help combat ocean acidification. We also wanted countries and regions to routinely include measures to reduce ocean acidification in their respective national legislation. So to work with people who are going to implement the knowledge that we generated to create changes in government and regional legislation. To be able to deliver the OARS outcomes, and I credit Jan Newton here, a co-chair of mine with on GOAN, with coming up with this concept of the OARS outcome onion. At the center of this OARS outcome, we've identified some co-champions who will provide the leadership for each of the outcomes that we've identified. Around them, they are starting to coalesce an outcome working group that will support these champions in setting out what the activities are required in order to deliver that outcome. What activities do we need? What engagements do we need? What outputs do we need? Then around that, again, we have a layer of experts and specialists who will drop in and provide specific bespoke knowledge and information and skills and expertise to help the delivery of those those activities. We also look to engage with specific delivery partners who will actually do the work that's required. It's all well and good oars outlining the roadmap, but without people who are prepared to get down and get their hands dirty and actually do the actions required, nothing will ever get delivered. And then, of course, there's layers around stakeholders and funders as well, who without them, there will be no one to use the information that we derive, and also no one to actually pay for it, because unless there's money on the table, none of this ever gets done. So what are we doing in the first year of the oars program? Well, we've identified the oars champions who are now bringing together these working groups, engaging with those key people who are going to be able to lay out the pathway to delivering the outcome. And that will be delivered in a white paper using a theory of change approach. We'll then be looking to engage with a more diverse range of partners and stakeholders to make those white papers come off the page and actually be implemented in a series of actions. And we'll also be engaging with funders to try and support those actions to make them real. So really, I sort of ask people to think about how you can help oars progress along this pathway. Think about the outcomes that interest you. Think about the ways in which you can be part of the delivery of that outcome. And talk to us, get engaged with us. We're not here as a way of doing everything, but what we do hope to be able to do is put the right people together and empower them to do something that we think is going to make a significant difference by the end of the decade. And with that, I will hand back to Jessie.
Thanks so much, Steve. That was
and
great.
I'll stop sharing. Okay.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Well, you guys are just a black box to me, but I'm glad you can see me and hear me. So thank you guys for taking over the controls and a good show of collaboration and camaraderie across the OA community. But really appreciate that presentation on oars, because I think it grounds this work in such a specific way, and echo the invitation. The OA Alliance is an oars co-champion, and we'll be working on some of the components that Steve referenced. And so we'll be working to really mainstream a lot of the OA action planning discussions that we have around what type of local information do we need for local response into the oars program. And so with that, it is my honor to turn it over to Kirsten Isensee with IOC UNESCO to give us our final presentation today around UN Sustainable Development Goal agenda, and specifically looking at SDG 14.3 and the relevant OA monitoring indicator. And so Kirsten, I'm hoping you can give us the high level overview of what this indicator is, and particularly how it's going to support OA efforts across the OARS program, as Steve just referenced, as well as potentially threads to pull through the dialogue. And with that, we'll conclude after your lightning round presentation and asking folks ability to stay on 1 or 2 minutes, and apologize for my technical issues.
Thank you very much. A lot to cover in 5 minutes, and I actually focused quite a lot on my really only 4 slides on 14.3 and 14.3.1, but just a little bit more general. Also for those who are not familiar, within the 2030 agenda, within this process, we have 17 goals, and the SDG 14 really focusing on the ocean really sets out a blueprint for ocean actions and sustainable development in the next 10 years, more or less until 2030. It gives us a possibility really to work together to manage our ocean resources sustainably. And in this process, there was one target identified which focuses on 14.3. We at the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, we are the custodian of this indicator for this target on 14.3, which means that we are responsible to do this global data collection for the indicator, which I will refer to in a second, develop a methodology, and also to increase capacity for countries to actually report towards. So again, we have the SDG goal 14, conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Under that one, we have the target 40.3, minimize and address the impact of ocean acidification, including through enhanced scientific cooperation at all levels. Of course, this is a target, and if you have a target, you kind of need to measure if you achieve it. And for that, a proxy and indicator was identified in 2017. Average marine acidity pH measured at an agreed suite of representative sampling stations. This short phrase is very short, but it has so many words which need explanation and definitions, and that was what we provided together with GOA-ON and the OA scientific community, really to have that properly, in science-based. But what does it actually mean? So to do what? So let's go the other way around this time from the indicator. So here it's really like we detect the ocean acidification, we detect the values, which then hopefully help to, with of course completed with other information, because we don't have any information about the impacts in that part, to develop and implement ocean acidification adaptation and mitigation strategies, which then hopefully will feed in a sustainable ocean management for future generations. But still, all it comes then back to the data collection, and actually it's not that easy. We all know, we know ocean acidification is happening, but do we know how much and where, especially in coastal areas where people rely on the ocean resources, and which is also of relevance for the UNFCCC, because that is in the end what is under national jurisdiction. Do we actually have that information on a national basis? We don't. So we launched this process to collect data from our IOC focal point, from the National Oceanographic Data Centers, from the GOA-ON members, using all those different ways, and from the National Statistical Offices to actually obtain the information which is already out there. At the same time, we support it, and we support OAS GOA-ON to increase this capacity at the national, at the scientific, at the institutional level. And not to stop really at the detection, but the so what question, also ask that one, like, so why should I care? What is actually the impact? And so it's important that we connect here then, and that is also the role of IOC in that part for being the custodian agency, to connect the scientists with those higher levels, with the ministries, to actually connect the data providers with the people who actually need the data, who use the data. And we hope really to increase the communication between the scientific community and the deciding bodies, the policy level. There's some good news already. I mean, we started with 8 countries in 2019. We are now 35 countries providing data to us. You see still a lot of gray parts, and still it's only, those are some stations. There are many more stations out there, but they are also providing data to different databases. It's different quality. All that is still a work in progress, combining the information from different databases to the capacity we build now will deliver data in 2-3 years. So there is an investment in the future to be done, and we start that. But I think it's also really a call to other organizations, to foundations, to countries, to continue supporting and invest in that. And I think with also aligning some of those UN processes with the Ocean and Climate Dialogue, and also contributing this type of information to the global stocktake will provide an good use of this information. Also, just to mention that this the same methodology is also used for the global climate indicator on ocean acidification. So the information we are contributing here for the SDG, we are also using for the global climate indicators, because this is where the community now agrees on, and we hope that that can continue and will be further adopted by many organizations and countries. And here you have a happy wall. Okay.
Thanks, Kirsten. Have you come to the final slide? Is that right to assume?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm at my final slide.
No,
And I think I managed totally on time.
wonderful. You did, and I'm glad that you had I'm glad you had the last word. That was well said, and really appreciate you threading back sort of the importance of sustaining this monitoring and research as we are moving closer to having that be more and more relevant to local, regional, nationally domestic mitigation and adaptation measures. And so I think that's a good place to end. We have a lot of work to do over the next year and across the UN decade to bring these things together. But I really very much appreciate your emphasis on the ongoing financing for this work as it is relevant to overall climate mitigation and adaptation. And so I think that's really where the OA Alliance will be putting a lot of time and emphasis, both at the upcoming dialogue in June in Bonn, but also at the UN Ocean Conference taking place in Lisbon. And the final thing I'll say is that we are really encouraging our members. Several national and subnational governments have registered voluntary commitments to advancing OA activities, whether that is action planning, whether that's promoting management and finance across the UN Sustainable Development Goal 14.3, the voluntary commitment platform. And so we very much encourage you all, members and partners of the OA Alliance, to register voluntary commitments for the upcoming conference. And we will continue to aggregate that and push for increased ambition for that type of commitment making that will advance this work collectively. So with that, thank you all for joining so much. Thank you to my co-hosts, and thank you to the presenters for being so gracious with my technical difficulties and for staying on time. And of course, for all the work. It's really exciting to see and look forward to collaborations as we go. And as always, feel free to reach out to me with any questions or comments or collaboration opportunities.